Let me just actually pull up what Donald Trump had to say on the tarmac. Here is his reaction to the major moves made by Russia, of course, on the battlefield from the buffer zone to the strikes. But this was Donald Trump's response to all of this.
I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay? We're in the middle of talking, and he's shooting rockets into Kiev and other cities. I don't like it at all.
President, what do you want to do about that?
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised. We'll see what we're going to do. What am I going to tell you? You're the fake news, aren't you? You're totally fake.
Of course, there are rumblings of sanctions. Lindsey Graham wants 500% tariff on Russia. And of course, the long-range weapons kabuki theater of sorts. But talk about first maybe what Russia is doing that's causing this response, because it seems like there's almost like this awakening of sorts of the reality of the situation that's being taken very, very badly here.
Okay, so first of all, let's address the absurd and obscene hypocrisy of this man, Donald Trump, who had just launched over 1,000 airstrikes on Yemen, killing hundreds, if not thousands of people. We don't really have a very good count of the civilian deaths in Yemen. It's quite hard. Who is facilitating the ongoing bombing and starvation blockade. I mean, an actual genocide taking place in Gaza. The U.S. facilitating that for Israel, and Donald Trump is going off about 13 people being killed in Russian targeted drone and missile strikes, well over 300 strikes total, right? So it was like nearly 300 drones and nearly another 100 missiles on top of that. And 13 people were killed. Now, we don't actually know who these people were, since most of these targets that Russia hit were the Kiev regime's military-industrial complex, including the Antonov plant in Kiev, previously an airline manufacturing plant, now used to produce drones, probably the Kiev regime's biggest single of their distributed network of drone building workshops. The Kiev regime made claims about, it shot down all but 5 of Russia's Garan drones, except that videos from on the ground in Kiev show 20 hits in a row by Garans on the Antonov plant. So if you saw big burning images from Kiev as a result of this strike, it is almost a certainty that what you saw was the Antonov drone production. So a military industrial site, perfectly legitimate. Were some of these 13 people killed their workers? Well, if so, that's actually legitimate targets, right? Were some of these other people killed by the Kiev regime's nearly non-existent, but still making an attempt air defense, which has often gone awry in the past, right? But let's assume that out of some nearly 400 strikes, Russia did kill 13 actual civilians as collateral damage. That is phenomenal in military terms. I mean, come on. 13 people out of 400 strikes, that's practically an impossible degree of yes, each individual actual civilian casualty is a tragedy, right? But we live in a world of tragedies. Let's be honest about that. We live in a world where countries use military, and not just countries, but non-state actors use military force against each other all the time. And that is,
but the precision, Mario, is what I say. That's the precision of Russia, because when you look at what the United States did, there was just a report that said what the United States did in Yemen was so imprecise that it essentially just killed a bunch of people, as you said, and wasted a whole lot of money it seems like the opposite here is going on, but continue.
Yes. All right. So that is, forgive the fall moralizing. The other thing, there's another clip from, I believe it's from later in the same sequence, where there's a journalist that points out to Trump, whom is claiming that Putin has gone crazy. I don't know why he's doing this. That pointing out that the Kiev regime had launched more than there was a total of 1,000 drones over 3 days, right? A large number of which were targeting Moscow. And a few of them did get through, right? I mean, not a lot of them. It has to be said that one of the differences is that Russia has a very powerful and very competent air defense and electronic warfare network. Well, the Western press even has been admitting how everyone says, we don't have enough Patriots. We don't have enough interceptors, right? Rubio, we don't have more Patriots to give. We asked the Germans and the Greeks, but they don't want to send them, right? There's no launchers, there's no interceptor missiles, and what else the Kiev regime has in terms of air defense. The French and the Italian systems are also, according to Ukrainian air defense sources, actually, they're also completely out of those as well. They've got nothing, right? They've got very little. So if they're trading long-range blows, right, between drone strikes, large scale, it must be said, large scale, long-range drone strikes in Russia, at Moscow and elsewhere, and Russia launching long-range drone and missile strikes. Russia's strikes, the Garans, the payload, the accuracy, much higher, right? Much more effective, and the Kiev regime has much less capable, efficient, and in all sense air defense than Russia has. So Russia is able to take those long range trade and barely break a sweat in doing so. So. And it was pointed out that Russia is loudly talking about that during one of these drone swarms that was targeting the Kursk region, exactly when Putin's helicopter was landing in the Kursk region. Putin was visiting the Kursk region for the first time since its full liberation by the Kiev regime. And they, quote unquote, got caught up in a drone swarm, such that Russian air defense and Russian air forces had to take active measures, according to the Russian government, to clear a path for Putin's helicopter, right? The equivalent in this terms of Air Force One, right? From landing safely. And there is an open question, right? I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in those kinds of coincidences. So obviously the Kiev regime was attempting to target the Russian president. The question is, how involved was the West in this, right? How involved with, in terms of satellite data and planning and everything else. And was the U.S. involved, right? If not the U.S., then certainly the United Kingdom and France. We don't know the answers to these questions, but the Russians certainly want to know. And that Russia's strikes, are certainly being pitched, and there's a good argument to make, as retaliation to the 3 days of 1,000 Kiev regime drone strikes, which included Moscow. So obviously Trump did not know this. He had to be told this by a journalist, and he said specifically, I don't know anything about that. So one, right, the orange buffoon is lying. Or two, which I find far more likely, he is less informed than the average viewer, far, far less informed than the average viewer of the Danny Dhaiphong show. Just saying, right? Just the average viewer, right? The guy who chimes in for 15 or 20 minutes of a conversation. So my first question then is, what the hell is Tulsi Gabbard doing?
I heard he doesn't sit in on those meetings, Mark. I heard he doesn't sit in on the. But anyway, the DNI meeting.
I mean, she should like go in and twist his arm behind his back and make him sit down and listen to his intelligence briefings. He's the president of the United States. If he's not listening to them, right? Because I don't know, right? Maybe she's not doing her job. Maybe they're not properly informing. Maybe she's not vetting everything that goes to his desk. I don't know about you, Danny, but I mean, I would sacrifice limbs for U.S. presidential intelligence briefings, right? That would be such a bonus to my job. I mean, firstborn child, hey, take my secondborn child too, right? I mean, in order to have that kind of intelligence information. So whether she's not informing him, whether he's simply not attending, which is, I mean, that is a criminal level of incompetence, especially when he is supposedly pushing some type of a diplomatic push, presenting the U.S. as some kind of uninterested third-party mediator between Russia and the U.S.'s proxy regime in Kiev. This is just, I mean, if he did not know, which it appears that he might, in one degree or another, this is criminal ignorance, and we have to always now factor that in to our understanding and analysis, in that the U.S. president simply doesn't have a fucking clue what's going on in Ukraine or anywhere else in the world for that matter, probably even most of the United States. That has to be where we have to now factor that in to everything. He goes off like this, calling the leader of the other nuclear superpower, right, and many other terms, one of the three great powers, crazy, right, and he's going to destroy his country, and going off on him like this, and he doesn't have the slightest idea what's going on, of the context of what actually happened, anything. So what else is there for Russia to do in such a situation but just ignore the noise and continue trucking on the battlefield with the looming big offensives coming this summer, right? Because obviously things can only be settled on the ground. And of course, probably the other big news, right, other than the long-range drone strikes back and forth, which it has to be said that for the first time, to a significant degree, there is a number of publications in the Western mainstream media who have been dragged, however grudgingly, kicking and screaming, to acknowledging that Russia is winning the drone war, both the drone evolution race, the drone production race, and the drone use race over Ukraine, as well as every other factor of this conflict, whether we're talking resources and manpower and artillery shells and everything else, right? The Economist was talking about how Russia is raining hellfire down on Kiev. And the Washington Post was lamenting about how the Kiev regime is scrambling to deal with Russia's electronic warfare jamming proof fiber optic drones, now with cables, able to operate, close to 20 kilometers deep behind the Kiev regime lines, absolutely eviscerating their logistics. And there was the Economist, the Times also ran a piece about Putin's increasingly brutal drone warfare, where they admitted that for the first time that I've seen in print, that Russia's drone production in terms of FPV drones, fiber optic drones, and others had surpassed the Kiev regime. Now, newsflash, when you're comparing Russia's military industrial scale factory production of very high quality drones, right, that keep evolving as this conflict goes on, to the, shall we say, artisanal, mostly underground, small distributed workshops that the Kiev regime is forced to assemble drones in. And even those are hunted constantly by Russia, including the strikes that hit the Antonov this weekend. But I mean, of course, Russia is going to take the lead in this. But there was also the acknowledgement that it's just not winning in quantitative terms, that it's winning in evolutionary and qualitative terms as well. And this is a big change because for about a year now, pretty much really since the Kiev regime failed in their NATO planned and equipped 2023 summer offensive. Since then, the story has been, Ukraine has focused on the drone war where they have an advantage. And that is where, that has led them to draw the conflict to a stalemate. They've replaced everything else that they don't have, right? The artillery, the other long range strikes, the tanks, everything else that Russia has an advantage, right? But they have lots of drones, and that's how because this is a conflict of the future. But now they're being forced to admit that drones are not the savior of the Kiev regime. It's not going to save the Kiev regime, and that Russia is out producing them and out innovating the Kiev regime, and therefore the entirety of the West, who is behind them in the drone race and the drone war, both in the factories on the battleground as well. So these are it's a narrative shift. We'll see if it endures. But it is something that has hit multiple major publications this week. So it's becoming harder for them to deny it. The other major news this week is the walked forward, then partially walked back, and we don't know what's going on with the new chancellor of the Reich, Germany, Merz, admitting that putting out that all restrictions on the Kiev regime's use of weapons deep inside Russia, if in fact they ever existed, are now gone. Not just for Germany, but for the UK, for France, for all the other European countries. And he even spoke for the United States, interestingly, something that hasn't been picked up by any other official that I've seen in the United States, and speaking for the US as well. Now, this was later partially walked back by another German official within the new Grand Coalition government coming from the SPD faction. So we don't know if they said that this wasn't the change and the policy is still the same as it has been. Well, and then that's the question, well, what has the policy been? And what a lot of people are reading in this is that Germany is about to send their Taurus cruise missiles, air-launched cruise missiles, which Scholz had long, objected to. And actually, maybe that was the only thing he held firm on during his entire chancellorship even. But he did hold firm on that, at least up until the end. And Merz, before coming into office, before the parliamentary elections in Germany, was very insistent that he wanted to see the Tauruses delivered. My guess is that the Tauruses have already been delivered, but they're still going to need Germans on the ground to use them, and they're going to need U.S. satellite intelligence data to properly use them, and they presumably are going to have to be fired from F-16s, which is going to be an interesting bet with the Kiev regime, having such problems with their nascent F-16 fleet, losing several of them already, apparently due to inexperience, accidents, possibly shot down by their own air defense, whatever it is. But I mean, they've essentially been a non-factor since, in the months that they've now, half a year, more than half a year, have been supposedly in the Kiev regime. Because these Taurus cruise missiles, they do have a longer range than the Storm Shadows and the Scalps that had previously been delivered by the UK and France. More than another third again as long. So we're looking at a range from 300 kilometers now becoming 500 kilometers. So it's more significant, but they're still going to have to air launch them. And that's going to put the F-16s, if they want to get anything beyond the front lines, they're going to have to start putting them into areas where they might be vulnerable to being shot down by the Russians instead of hiding in West Ukraine on the borders. So look in the next month to see these Tauruses used for the first time. That would be my bet. Now, Russian air defense, as they have with the Storm Shadows, the Scalps, they will quickly adapt, right? The Kiev regime will get some hits in, particularly in the beginning, and this has already been recognized and known by the West. So expect to see the Kiev regime, with NATO planning, launch a large number of these Taurus cruise missiles right away. Supposedly, they'll get about 150. Right. And that's it. Right. They're not going to get any more than that, because Germany only has about 250 of these operable. Right. They have about 500 of them. About 250 of them are operable. The rest will have to be refurbished to be put back into use. And they want to keep a minimum. The German Bundeswehr, the German military, wants to keep 100 of them minimum on hand. That's what we have from previous leaked German generals' conversations about the Taurus missile use. So that's 150, right? That is what they're going to get. And they'll probably try to blow all of that right away to get the biggest bang for the buck. Because after just a few uses, Russia's, it's Russian air defense and electronic warfare is like the Borg. Right, in Star Trek, right? Yeah, your phasers, you got 3 shots before the Borg shields adapt, and then that's it. They're completely ineffective after that. And it was Jake Sullivan who just admitted in the last couple of months that for all the vaunted noise about the ATACMS missiles, they had no operational effect whatsoever. Russia very quickly adapted to them. The same thing with the Storm Shadows and the Scalps. When's the last time you heard about any big success with those? So my theory here is we see several developments. We see these long-range strikes of drones going back and forth. And a big part of this is an air defense war of attrition. Because to bring down these drones and missiles, right, each side has to expend air defense assets. In a lot of cases, that means air defense missiles. Not always. You can use some other things, maybe for the Garans and some other things. But that's the majority of what's being used, right? And we know that the Kiev regime has a vast shortage of air defense interceptors. We know that Russia has a much larger supply and production of them, but we don't have a good sense of where their red lines are either. So what it appears is that these strikes by the Kiev regime, right? We saw another 100 drone strike in the last evening. So we're seeing over 100 long-range drones a night, sometimes 200, 300, right? All constantly. They are trying to map out and exhaust Russia's air defense, most likely in preparation for a renewed Western missile strike, probably involving the new Tauruses and probably some stockpiled Storm Shadows and Scalps as well, to maximize what they can get out of them. Because presumably then they'll know more about Russia's air defense locations, all right, and their capabilities. They'll have exhausted them bringing down large numbers of drones, right? And then particularly if they're using the Tauruses for the first time, they'll be more effective. And so you see a big missile strike all at once. Now, that's a theory. We'll see if that's what happens. But if so, it's going to have to happen soon, right? To take advantage of what the Kiev regime might have gained with mapping out and to what degree they have exhausted Russian air defense in the last week with these trading long-range strike blows back and forth, right? So, I mean, it's an air defense war of attrition fought with drones, and on the Russian side, drones and missiles. So it's you see that these two stories actually dovetail right into each other. The big drone conflict, long-range strikes going on, over the battlefield over the last week, and this announcement by Merz and the possibility that the Tauruses may be delivered, may have already been delivered, and then you start to see the possibility that they may be linked, and we'll find out whether that's true or not. Probably in the coming days, right? I would guess not even more than a week. But it's interesting. Of course, on the ground, Russia's still advancing everywhere, and Donald Trump is losing his shit, and Macron is being knocked around by his husband, whatever. Zelensky is being the same. And while Trump is going off and saying that Putin is going crazy and I don't know what he's doing, he's also saying that Zelensky needs to shut up. And every time he opens his mouth, he makes things worse, and just shut up.